Thank you, Professor Yang. I'm Theodore. I have a question regarding also the this antimicrobial coating.
Yes.
It's amazing how it can kill all the bacteria and viruses and even spores. But I have a question in regard to, since every action would also lead to another reaction.
Yes.
I'm sure we're aware of when we invented penicillin.
Yes.
I mean, antibiotics was like, wow, huge breakthrough. But since it's being it's overused, these days we're warned not to use antibiotics whenever we get sick because we'll be breeding these superbugs. What are your comments and thoughts in regard to when this product is being used widely? How would that impact our overall environment?
Yes, actually the major ingredient on the materials is already widely used. Okay, because as you remember, when we first take on this project, like one of the requirements that they had from the Beijing side is that anything that you had should be already US EPA or FDA approved. So that meant to say it should have a certain history. And then when we did the search on the material, as I mentioned, the material is not new. It's just how we reconstitute it, okay, to get this performance. Now, this material had been with us for more than 20 years, okay. It's used for disinfection of beverage bottles, okay, and wine bottles, okay. So you're exposed to that. It's used in food. Okay, it's actually used, like for example, in a poultry business. Okay, that is used for disinfection of poultry. Okay, before it goes, disinfection of vegetable, fruits. So it's extremely widespread. Okay, now its application in term of like application that we are using it right now is not done because number one, this material comes as a gas phase. So it's used more or less like fumigation. Actually, this chemical, I can tell you, is chlorine dioxide, okay? It's used as a fumigation. Like, for example, when the Capitol Hill had the anthrax scare, they had to close it down for 3 days to fumigate. They fumigated with chlorine dioxide to kill the anthrax spores. Now, the only difference here is that this one, okay, retained the gas phase into a solid phase that allow it to do long-term disinfection, okay? And then this chemical is widely used in a lot of like food processing, as I mentioned. It's used in veterinary medicine, and it's used even in your mouthwash, okay, in some of the deodorant, okay. So this is when we select the material, the selection process. Whenever we talk with a colleague, okay, old material doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad material. So always you need to come up with something new to be sexy, okay? There is an advantage of using old material because there's always a history, okay? There's already a known quality about this material. And simultaneously, there is already the supply chain, okay, for this material. Now, if I create something absolutely new, I need to first create the supply chain in order to manufacture this. So there will be a significant barrier for me to enter, okay, into a commercial product. So I need to wait for the supply chain, or if I have huge enough capital, I create the supply chain, okay. So that is part of the interest that I had on this topic because it's a very scientific problem. Simultaneously, it had to have a lot of practicality and application that had to be injected in. Because remember, when I started that, there is extreme urgency, okay, in 2004 to come up with the coating material. So you cannot develop something that is too exotic that you will not have the supply chain to manufacture it, okay, in the volume that may be necessary. So that was the the way that we had looked at this problem, okay. So, thank you.
Yeah, I got one question for you, Professor Yang, on this antibacterial coating.
Yes.
Maybe it's a very simple question. Now, number one, how do you plan to apply large scale? You see, when it's very easy to test on the lab or small mock-up, whatever. Now, since it's a surface, you're trying to eliminate contamination or infection or whatever through contact, right?
Yes.
Now, then how do you prove that it's doing the job? So suppose I have to coat the whole hospital with this coating everywhere, and after 1 year, you have to do what we call a benchmark. Those without coating, you have maybe 100 cases. Those with coating, you got 10 cases.
Actually, this is one of the...
I mean,
yeah,
because
we
counting the bacteria on a surface doesn't mean
Yes.
I'm going to get infected. It's two different things.
Because
Do you have those numbers?
Okay, because one thing, as you mentioned, like the way that you get sick had many different parameters. Number one, the microbial loading is one parameter, correct? The secondly is how susceptible the person is that come into contact with that. How virulent the bacteria is, how infective it is. And then how much amount that you are able to transfer into the person. So there's actually even like hand hygiene, like they shared with us. Okay, when they institute the hand hygiene in the hospital after the SARS, after 6 years, they're still trying to find out what is the impact. Okay, because the standard deviation is too big. Okay, and then that is always the issue in the technology. Okay, so you can try to do extensive practical life testing, which we were actually doing, because like we are doing it in hospital, and recently we contacted CHP, and they were very interested for us to test it in old folks' home. Okay, which is number one, the turnover of the resident is much less than the hospital. Because in the hospital it's a very transient situation. You have patient coming in and out, okay? And then each hospital, even though there's a standard protocol, each hospital is still use their own method in terms of cleaning, in terms of surveillance, in terms of other issues. So there's still a variation on that, okay? So we were working with the doctor. We understand, okay? Any type of technology had to be tested, but there should also be balance. Because number one, okay, the most of the disinfectant that we are using right now, they never went into hospital for testing. That, to be very, very honest, because it's not required. US EPA only required you to meet the AOAC standard, and the AOAC standard is quite lax. You can claim 99%. You don't have to tell them how long. Okay, 99% can be 24 hours. Like all the bactericidal coating is standard in the market. They can label it bactericidal if it can reduce the number of microbial on the surface by 99% in 24 hours. Okay, so that is the issue. I do understand. Okay, and we do try to, because for us we are academics. Number one, as I mentioned, I learned from the doctor: do no harm. That is the number one thing that we need to do. Secondly, the way that when we talk with the doctors, the strategy is like, we don't want it as a replacement with the current practice of hand hygienes and vigilant cleaning. We don't want that, okay? Because once you relax that, okay, human factor come in, okay? And then human factor is very difficult to control, okay? Now, to what extent do you do the coating? The way that we think about it is like, hospital know where are basically the hotspot, wherein they knew, okay, more or less by experience and by observation, where the nosocomial, okay, transmission of diseases is most important. That's why they use the ICU. That's number one, because they knew that the nosocomial, because the patient is so susceptible, so even a small amount of microbial loading can get them sick. So now they wanted to do it in a neurosurgical ward, because that is another hotspot for them. Okay, why don't they do it in the general ward? Because they don't think so. Because the people in general ward still are not that susceptible compared to people in the intensive care unit or in the neurosurgical ward. Orthopedic ward, we did it. Okay, in the orthopedic ward is different. The patient are not susceptible, but most of the patient have wound, so that they have a lot of bacteria in the environment. Okay, so that is another a different issue. Okay, so I know it's very complicated. When I first look at it, I was surprised. I said I I love it better to do it in the lab, okay? Because it's much more, there are many parameters, okay? And then everything had to be statistics. And then whenever you deal with people, you can throw everything up in the air, okay? Because it's very difficult to control people's behavior.